So we'll start maybe I'd like to share something on the parasha maybe, and then if we want to talk about things, there's a interesting medrash, not over here in Shashirim. It speaks about Be'eros. If you look at these parashas, Be'er is ubiquitous. Yitzchak Avinu we don't have much about Yitzchak, but he's digging Be'eros, he's digging wells. Yaakov is by the well. And the Medrash says that Be'eros, there are 48 Be'eros mentioned in the Torah. Keneged memchas svarim shaTorah nikna behem. I actually, when I did a digital search, so I assume it's very hard because the word Be'er is mentioned less, but Be'eros might include more, but that's the number more, but it's memches Be'eros. So, okay, memches, it's very nice. Some of the Sfarim, the Zohar, that there were memches Neviim, that were misnabed to Yisrael. So that the Gemara says. So it's also memches. So the significance of memches, it's one short of memtes. I don't. That's not the point. I will try to ponder. But just 48 times the word bear, 48 times nikna behem, and therefore what? There's a part of Torah that's called remes. A remes is significant only in what it teaches, not in itself. That there's 48 is cute, but so what? And find many times Be'er is used as a mashal for Torah in many different ways, many different psukim. I'd like to try to maybe a point or two about it. There are items. So for instance, a person makes a kli. He makes a vessel to hold water. So I produced the vessel, I made the vessel, it's able to hold rainwater, and as big as I made it, that's how much rainwater it holds. No more, no less. And my job was really to make the kli. And in a sense, it's thanks to me that I'm able to gather water. When I'm planting trees, harvesting stuff, growing stuff, it takes a lot of work. It's my effort produced fruits. And these are the fruits it produced. That represents avodas adam, where a person's abilities go and what they accomplish. A be'er, a well, is a fascinating item. It's something where I don't actually make it. What I'm really doing always is uncovering it. I'm digging out, and the water is there because Hashem put it there. 1. 2, the amount of water that comes out of the well is not at all commensurate to what I worked. I could work for a day, the water will come out and endlessly. And as far as we can sense, a well represents a sort of an infinite supply. So here we are. We have something that I can do, and 2 very fascinating aspects. 1, it's not really the direct results of my efforts. 2, I'm able to tap in something way beyond my effort and infinite. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world in a way that its basic setup is meant to give us a certain insight and understanding of things that are much deeper. So let's move it up a notch. Waters are used many times to describe Chachma. The Rambam, at the end of Mikvos, speaks about the Remez Mikvos being Mei Hadas, the waters of Das. Water and Chachma, the Rambam tells us, and again, it's all of his form, represents Chachma and Das. Chachma and Das comes in 2 versions. One is scientific. In other words, I want to understand how trees grow, how cells function, how certain chemicals combine with each other. I experiment, I observe, and I come up with a conclusion that might be right. So now, my effort is direct. It's something that the amount of experimentation I do, the amount of observation, directly correlates into the results. Sometimes I'm disappointed, but it's a direct function. 2, I will never discover anything more than the effort I put in. So if I studied salt, I'll know a lot about salt. I can extrapolate. I can know things that are similar, just like when we have the periodic table, we can say something that's true about one element is true to things in the same column and the same row and so on. But by and large, it's limited to my effort and what I did. Then there's another chachma, and that's the chachma of good and bad. And that's called Torah. Now, a person who puts no effort in is an Amaretz, will remain an Amaretz, and will know nothing. That's 100% true. But the effort we put in is a little bit interesting. The Mishnah lists 48 and a lot of it has to do with things other than just direct learning. We also know many Sfarim that Kedusha is helpful for understanding, and the Rambam speaks about Midos and things like that. All of that goes into what's needed to understand. Why? I could be the meanest, nastiest, crassest person and be a great chemist. There's no stira. As long as I put my hours into experimenting, as long as I'm bright enough. And Torah, it's different. 2, Torah allows me to understand good and bad past what my mind is capable of processing. The good and bad of Gzela, my mind can process fully. The good and bad of Tumah and Tara, Kosher and Treif, my mind can't process. I can, but I have access to it when I'm Omel b'Torah and Yegeh b'Torah. So Torah is a very interesting, the drawing of Torah is very, very interesting in that it requires input on my part, but what I get is far beyond the result of the input. You find Lashonis Chazal, there's Nase K'mayna Mizgaber, and Torah just flowed. You see descriptions that Rizal came to Tzfas and maybe lived a year and a half, maybe between a year and up to 2 years. And the amount of Torah that he spouted in those years are basically all of Kabbalah, an incredible amount. And somehow we latch into something much bigger. But since we're trying to dig into and attach ourselves to something beyond ourselves, I have to get rid of a lot of dirt. Digging out the dirt is it's not creating the water, but it's removing barriers. Because Torah is Chachmas Elokai, it's the understanding of good and bad that Hashem understands. For it to resonate with us, for us to tap into it, I need to be able to have an open space. Timtum Alev, Averis of all stripes and shape, cause Timtum Alev. And I can repeat the words, I can talk about Torah, but it doesn't connect unless I have a heart that's ready for it. So the avoda, Torah is an extraordinary voyage. It starts with a person being misyagea. 1, misyagea to dig and to try to get to it. 2, a yegia to make ourselves into cleaner people, better people, people that are less coarse and more refined. When we break through, the breakthrough gives us so much more than our effort. There's a very famous verse in the Goyen, Yogata Matzosa, that you start with Yegia and end as a Metzia. It's exactly, the Gross says it, and the Goyen speaks about a lot of places, but the point is, that's exactly what we're talking about. You start by making the connection, and in due time, and as big as the connection built, that's how much comes out. It's an incredible year 2, 3 for that you're now here, and what you're trying to do is to connect the Torah. It starts with understanding that it's not just studying, as opposed to studying science or anything that's secular, where the mental effort and the hours are really what give the results, and you get the credit for that, and that's it. But here is something very different. The real understanding of Tova and Ra is a ruchnistic understanding. It requires Yigiyas Torah to work hard at learning. It requires a certain taras hanefesh, a zikuch hanefesh. When we put in as much effort and time as we put in both of them, we will get an infinite supply. It's one of the things, it's easier for us many times to do mitzvahs essays than los essays, than stay away from los essays. A mitzvah essay, I feel an achievement. Okay, I have this mitzvah. However we picture it, it's an asset in our lives. A los essay, okay, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. We don't have that feeling. But if we understand the tahara that a person builds in his nefesh by staying away from what he shouldn't do, that gives me a quicker and greater connection for Torah. So, Bez Hashem, use this tkufa in your life to its fullest, dig deep and broad, and Bez Hashem, the connection and the flow of Torah should remain for a lifetime, Bez Hashem, for all of you. Yeah. So introduce yourself, please. Tell me where you're from.
I'm Rafi Sloan. I'm from Silver Spring, 2 minutes away. I was wondering, you've been very successful in your own community of maintaining a connection and a relationship with parts of the community that might be naturally further away from you. And I was wondering if there were any lessons or experiences from that effort, that endeavor, that you think could be important keys to mending some of the rifts that exist between different parts of Jewish society, both in America and especially in Israel, where those rifts feel incredibly large.
So it's hard to extrapolate. I'll never say, when you live, maybe we'll understand, people always speak about smaller communities as having more achdus than larger. So everyone says, well, you have no choice. You need 10 people per minyan, so no matter what the other 5 people are wearing, you're going to have to include them in. I think it's more than that. I think the lack of contact with people that are different and understanding them as people and the positive and understanding why you're different is helpful. As we grow to being larger communities, it becomes challenging. And there's an advantage when it's a small community and you know everyone else, you live next to everyone else, and you interact. You're able to have that sense, and that's very positive. It is something I appreciate. When I was young, I grew up in New York. That's I lived in Yerushalayim afterwards for many years, Baruch Hashem, and I've been living in Silver Spring for almost 30 years now. 30 years. It is to appreciate that type of connection. I don't know how you transition that to when you have a large tzibur and people don't make those connections. There are certain things. There's a program run by the wife of a friend of mine, learned in Shiva, very chashuv Maggid Sheh, is Rav Koshelevsky Maggid Sheh. She's a wonderful woman. Her parents were tremendous askanim. And she has a program, I think it's called Keshe Yehudi, if I'm not mistaken. The point of it is, she matches up one-on-one, I believe mostly Haredi people with Chiloni people, to learn once a week. On the phone, I assume, most of the time. I think it's by far the best program. They have a few thousand people, actually. The point is, when you know a person as a person, you understand them, you understand that they mean well, you understand that it's not right, and you think differently, and you disagree. But when somebody lives far away in a different place, in a different, and you're insulated, and they're insulated, it becomes more challenging. I don't know the answer to that. But there's something about when you have closer personal connections, it's so much more natural, so much easier, and it's one of the things, Baruch Hashem, we found to be amazing in the community by us. I don't want to toot our community's home, but it is an amazing community. There was an evening with the Rebbitzins, and there was on the panel. There was a Rebbitzin whose husband is from Lakewood. He's a Rabbi there. Whose husband is from YU. Whose husband is Chabadnik. Whose husband is Lemir. And one of the women got up and said, I want people to take a minute and note that this is one of the unique communities where we all sit together as close friends. And we have different communities, but together. It is something that I'm not sure how when it starts becoming very big and everybody has their own world, it's hard. I don't know the answer to that. It is a challenge. Yeah, what's your name?
Avi Bulov. I'm from Boston. Hasmada Tefillah is one of those goals that is less directly focused on sometimes in yeshiva, but it's central to having a successful life as an Obed Hashem. I was wondering if the Rav had any advice or points to focus on regarding advancing in the level of your tefillah.
It seems to be, it's fascinating. When I was growing up, tefillah seemed to be that drew people more. Everybody davened, very few people learned. In the Hasidic world, tefillah seems to be the key. In our world, it's across the board. In every yeshiva, every type of yeshiva, tefillah really, really straggles, suffers. I don't know. So, first of all, our Rosh Kollel, Rav Reingold, always says over from his Rabbi, Reb Chaim Stein, in Telz, he said, in Europe, life was so difficult, so much difficulties, anti-Semitism, parnasa, poverty, kids not married, struggles. It just needed the tiniest excuse for the floodgates of tears to come out. Today, Baruch Hashem, we're so much better off with all the tzaras. We're so much better off. People don't feel that lachatz, but I think that should bring tefillah to a different level. The first thing is, I think we need to clear a certain misconception. We talk about tefillah and its emotional experience. Imagine somebody was not well, and you would say Rafa'enu with tremendous kavanah, and somebody was direly poor, and you say Baruch Aleinu, and so on. An emotional high is not easy to come by. It by its nature is like that. Let's take a mashal for it. Now, people get married with all the nice talk about your rest of your life should be like Sheva Brachas. It's silly. Achshavos is a certain high in life. You're expecting a certain steady relationship where you talk often, you have quality time often, and you don't have to sit down every time. Let's say you have whatever time you have set aside as quality time. It doesn't mean it peaks emotionally, but it means you're focused, and the only other person in the conversation is your spouse. And that's strong. And a person who reflects and says, I have that relationship, has a deeper emotion than the high of a nuchasen. In tefillah, the key is 3 times a day, we touch base HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means our ishtadlus is we shut out the world outside. No need to say that having a phone on in any way while you're davening, even if it's a very important call, is not right. It destroys what tefillah is. It also means you're looking in the siddur or whatever, you're focused on what you're saying. Kadosh Baruch Hu, you give people das and chachma and depending on your nusach, haskel or bina, and I want it, I need it, I need this and this. The sense that you recognize the Kadosh Baruch Hu as the source of it, and you're touching base, is what it builds. Occasionally, we'll have a very uplifting tefillah, but tefillah cannot constantly be a highly uplifting experience. There are certain rebbes who have neshamas from a different world, and it's always ne'ilah. That you have to be blessed with a neshama like that, and that's it. It's not something to replicate. And if you have that neshama, I'm sure you're not asking me your advice. So it's fine. But the seriousness of it is, I believe that Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one who gives life and everything with it. And I 3 times a day I need to reconnect. And reconnecting means simply being focused and acknowledging it with my words. If we understand that to be tefillah, we can do that. If we have that, every so often a person will feel a surge of something special. Yes, what's your name?
I'm Donnie.
From?
Westchester, New York, right there. I was wondering, so we have one of our primary goals as Jews is L'Chino L'Olam Malchut Shaddai. And I was wondering what the Rav thought about how that balance should be, just doing that by doing mitzvot, and that essentially all with the world, or how much we need to be doing that by directly interacting with the world outside of the Jewish community. What would the Rav's thoughts on that?
So, 2 things. Our general Masoros in my yeshiva certainly was, and I guess the feeling, let's take the Kuzari's general approach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu recognized, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I cannot make the entire world good in one shot. We have, not everyone's capable of getting there. We tried with Noah's story, it didn't go. We tried, our flood didn't go. We're going to be selecting a group of people that will serve to be a paradigm. It's like, for instance, let's take an example. You're in a school, and the teachers, the Rabbi, are trying to get everyone to behave, to learn, and okay. You bring them to a place that's supercharged, and people see something, they say, wow, this is what I want to be like. Having a model. So Klal Yisrael was chosen from humanity to be a model. And when we become Anoshim Shleimim, then that will be the hashpah. Focus inwards and if we're Mekayim, Tarek Mitzvahs, the way we should be Mekayim, then Umas Olam will say, this is different. There's something about these people that's different. And it will bring people closer. So certainly my chinuch, and certainly I think the ruach in this farm where they speak about Israel being chosen as a nation. Individuals do not impact history. Nations do. Individual is always, he's a fluke, he's a saint, okay, but that a people can act in a certain way, that people can be most nefesh, that people can live for what's good and for what's right in ways that other people find just not believable. It tells them humanity has that, except that you haven't gone the full length to get there. So I believe making ourselves into society that fulfills, that embodies what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us is the best way to mashpia. Imagine that the hack in the Goyish business world would be, whenever a Jew says something, he's good for his word. I don't know what it is. What impact do you think that would have? Or I never heard him badmouth anyone. That would be incredible. So I believe acting in ways that are, I don't need to actually proselytize. I just need to bring out what Klal Yisrael should be, and the people around will take note, I believe. Yeah, what's in it?
My name is Eitan
Rob.
from New York. How should we approach learning, studying topics that are much more difficult to understand or comprehend, like together?
So, a good point. Let's talk about how do we approach it? It's become, once upon a time, Kabbalah and anything like it was off limits to everyone but chosen few. Hasidus broke the taboo a bit and felt it was important to invigorate people with it. And today it's become a lot more out there. I'm sure if I'll date my, if you type in Kabbalah.org, I'm sure you'll find something. A more modern person say there's an app for it, and I don't keep up enough, but whatever it is, and it's very problematic. I want to try to explain what about it is problematic and how we need to understand it. Imagine somebody, God forbid, is born blind. Totally blind. This person is a highly intelligent person. This person is a person who is a deep person. And he sits down with a friend and says, I've heard so much about colors. Explain to me what colors are. So the person says, okay, we have senses. You hear, right? You smell, you taste, you feel. Okay? Now, let's take hearing. We have very loud and strong sounds, drums beating. We have very sweet and refined tone like a violin. We have beats, we have this, we have that. Okay, now in the world of sight, it's also a sense, and it has strong, weak, etc. Tranquil, exciting, provocative, evocative. Now, blue is a color that's associated with tranquility. People feel tranquil with blue, and that's because the ocean is blue, the sky is blue. Red tends to be very provocative, has to do with blood. The person understands, and he doesn't understand. So what I explained to you is it's a correct analogy. It's abstract. It's giving information, but it'll never give that sensation that a person doesn't have it. The minute we talk about a world that's not physical, we're blind. We have no senses that can digest it. There are things written about it that we can use as analogies so that we have some thoughtful insights. How it's going to happen, it's nonsense. No idea, nothing. But what it means is that a person, the way we see people, that's not the final product. It's deficient. It requires us to labor to bring out the best. And at some point, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will put us back in the way that is the way Adam should be. What that is, how that is zero ability to understand. So it's a wrestling match between information, and all of Kabbalah has that predicament. I'm trying to teach something about something that's incomprehensible. How do you teach incomprehensible? And expect the guys to do well on the test. That's the hard part. So the answer is you have to be refined, like we spoke about before. Person has a sense of kedusha. I have a sense. I recognize all the stories of very big tzaddikim dolim that could sense if the meat was kosher or not kosher. Stories of Chavetz Chaim I heard from one person over where he refused to eat something and he couldn't say why. And then they found there was a problem with the shechita. Another time there's a problem with gzela. How did he sense it? I can't translate it, but I recognize that the world of kedusha, if you have a refined sense of things, there's a sense of it. So we have to talk about these things because they're part of Ikrei Das, believing Chesed Gemuna. What it means is that a person was created to live forever. It means that the state we're in, we can't, because we naturally have deficiencies. So we can learn things about it, understand things about it, but we have to be very cautious to try to then put it into. I was once, when I was growing up, lived in New York, in Lower East Side, and next door to me there was a Chassidish family, and the Chassidish kid was my age. One of the kids was my age. He went to a real cheder. I went to a school, Aleinu, but we were good friends. And he, so he came once from cheder. They taught us all the Zayin Rekiim. They taught him the Gemara of Zayin Rekiim. I was very jealous. No way. Yeah, and he listed them. I didn't know them. We were young kids. Okay, so he got up to highest Rekiah. Okay, Smarty Alec, and what's on top of that? Say, thought a minute, Kiseh covered. Okay, and what's on top of that? Hashem, he's saying Kiseh covered. And what's on top of that? That was a hard one. So he thought, and he said, Hashem has an attic where he keeps his Pesach dishes. I knew I knew he was right, because there's nothing higher than the Pesach dishes in the attic. So I admitted defeat. I knew I was defeated. But that's the problem when we try to translate, especially today where everything is graphic. So they'll have like a picture of lights and something or other. We sort of a hazy picture. You have to use seichel and not dimion to have some out of it. Yeah, what's your name?
Yoni Casimir from Manchester. In regards to more contemporary religious issues, should one know when to kind of seek compromise and say, my values might be in some way wrong, and it comes to a conclusion, versus knowing when I shouldn't compromise on my values in any way, shape, or form. The other side is completely wrong, and by compromising on my values, I lose everything.
So that is actually the root of many genuine disagreements. In other words, real disagreements where people have, they agree on what the core values are, but then the question is how much compromise. But I would like to think, being in a yeshiva for a long enough period of time, gaining an understanding of what is fundamental and what things are expressions of it, but not fundamental itself. It's a judgment call, and that's why it's so hard, and that's why we look for a big person to help us, because we say, for instance, let's give an example where I have somebody's ill, and you can take a blood test, and the blood test has a clear indication of the disease. You don't need a big doctor to tell you what the disease is. It comes out from the lab, and you can do, you can have, today they probably do have AI just tells you, and take this medication. But sometimes you have, nothing shows up in the test, but the person is clearly ill. And you want somebody to give you, who has a good sense of things, to say, you know what, I've been in this business 40 years, I'm telling you this is it. It's the same thing is true here also. When it's a clear-cut halacha, depending on how clear-cut it is, what level, knowing the halacha is enough. When we have these big issues, and there were genuine, valid difference of opinion on that, like when do we say it's a b'diavad situation because we don't want to exclude X, and when do we say where we are giving up on something that's not ours? And those are issues that there were genuine difference of opinion. Finding a person who people should be guided by people they feel are big enough to be able to make a judgment call, not just point halacha, but a judgment call. That's as far as I think I could. Yes.
Time, I'm from Philadelphia. Is the Haredi hashkafa and practice the ideal, or is it dependent on every Jew?
It depends who you ask. That's so a few caveats. The word, the looser term is, the more people are included, the first question is, who is Haredi? What is Haredi? One person doesn't think the other person, and so on. A person should feel comfortable that the path he's following is correct. There's no way a person standing in one path can say whether the other path is correct or not. I can say why I feel this way, why he feels that way, why the other person's that way. But how can I sit here and say that everybody else is wrong? I had a friend of mine who was a very good chaver, very astute, very got things really well. So we once talking about something, and he says, "Okay, Aaron," he says, "the bottom line is, except for me and you, the whole world is crazy, and about you, the jury's still out." but that's at the end of it. So I obviously choose to follow a path that I feel is correct. But there's no way I can say objectively and say, Rav Abba Berman, he was a very chashuv yeshiva. People don't know him. He had a very small yeshiva, but he used to stutter. He was a very deep person. He told them, from your perspective, you're right, but your perspective is wrong. So it's based on that, and people exchange their parts of him. Those stay in those same Shabbos. People have different, genuinely different. That's true. Different deos is that. Yeah.
My name is Yogi Myers from Cleveland. To what extent does the Rosh Yeshiva think our emotional connection, the Torah mitzvot and Hashem should be a focus in our avodah Hashem, and to what extent should it be just focus on the humanity by Hashem?
So I think the point he's making is very, very important. We somehow consist of two things. We consist of feelings and emotions, and we consist of understandings and a sense of duty and so on. Both are part of us. For the person who only follows it's all about what's the halacha, what's the right thing, and is it wrong, is it right, and I need to do it. There's a sense that the person is not living it. And very few people have that type of mindset where it's just checking, it's almost mechanical. On the other hand, emotions have a danger that they become fluff. Let's take an example. We think about the Chet HaEgel as being terrible. But if you look at the Psukim and Chazal, they were left leaderless. 40 days gone by, no Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, somebody says, we need a substitute. And they get the Mekubalim, they have a name. They have one of the Shemus, they throw into the fire, and lo and behold, the calf comes out, and they're dancing and singing. It was a very, very high-pitched emotion. Yes, it's right. Yechi HaEgel Azov. And it's so much so that they didn't, they didn't run away when Moshe came down. So that's when emotions run amok, and they don't answer to what's wrong. It's wrong, and that's it. There's a story I don't remember. It's gone through, but there was some story I don't know, like a few hundred years ago, where there was somebody who had owed money to somebody. They took him he died without paying the debt. They took the Yisomim to the Torah, and the Bezdin paskined that you can't collect from Yisomim if it's till the Gdolim and so on. All of a sudden, the Bezdin fainted, and then they revived him. He shaken, and he said, I just went up to Shemayim, and the father who had died came to me pleading, and he said that he can't go into Gan Eden until his debts are not paid. L'man Hashem should pay it. So everyone said, so what's the halacha? The halacha is you're not allowed to take the money from the kids. The motion can't pass in the halacha. It would be gzela for me to take the money from the Yisomim until the Gdolim. So the point is, right and wrong has to be. If I can give an analogy, it says in the Gemara that the bones of a person are contributed by his father, the skeleton, and the flesh is contributed by the mother. If you think about it, our body, our anatomy, our tsuris adam consists of two things. If you were to have a skeleton without flesh on it, unless it's Halloween, it would be extremely distasteful. It's hard, it's brittle, expressionless, not very geschmack. So if people would be skeletons, that wouldn't be great. On the other hand, a blob of protein, a blob of protoplasm is ugly, unwieldy, and disgusting. Not so stuff that's gooey and mushy without backbone is not. So the ideal tsuris adam is a skeleton that's unyielding and flesh that's warm that you can press and response. That's the same thing as true in Ruchnius. Halacha is a backbone, and whatever it is, there's a skeleton, there's a bone there, and the bone is adkan. This is not something, it's wrong. If it's wrong no matter what. But my interaction with the halacha, my interaction with other people is soft. It's warm, emotion, feeling, and so on. So the integration of the two, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made our core two items, bones and flesh, seichel and rigidity, and flexibility and warmth. And tsuris adam must have both integrated. So I think that's the way to possibly to explain it. Yeah.
What does the Rosh Hashiva think the direction towards a solution is in relation to the divide in Israeli civil society related to the Haredi draft?
I honestly don't know. It's a very complex situation. It's very difficult. Two groups of people with extraordinarily deep and powerful emotions. I'm optimistic because I believe Mashiach come anytime. I don't know. It's powerful because people with very strong sense of right, very deep emotions at the core. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. Yeah. What's it?
My name is Ben Zara. I'm from Roslyn, New York. To what level does the Rav think that yeshiva students should
What? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
to what level does the Rav think that yeshiva students should balance learning new material with doing chazara on previous material and solidifying it?
So it's interesting how things tend to go in cycles. Once upon a time, learning and chazering endless amounts of times and taking the famous pin test, the way you know where where the pin lands and every thesis and that was learning. People began looking around and they began reading books and things and saying, wow, there's so much thought, insight. This seems to be just rote and no analysis, no thought, and learning it lost a lot. Reb Chaim came around and he opened up a new panim of Torah, which was credible, and it attracted a lot of people, and people really, it opened their eyes and hearts. And it was a savior. They said that Rabbi Santa said he's going to save the next door. It's very possible that, I don't know, he said it, but it says that. But as time went on, because, and especially in the Haredi world, in the yeshiva world, this is it's a common issue. The high performer is the person who gets up and says the greatest chiddush. So everything became geared to that, to the detriment of knowing material and so on. So like everything, there has to be something in the middle. I don't think people understand, and it is begun to understand how much people appreciate knowing something. And unless you chaza things a lot of times, you don't really know it. and you certainly don't feel you have it. In America, there are a lot of learning programs. Torah, Rice, Vaharav. I'm not sure. It's the same organization, different name, but the idea is to chaza something well enough until you know it cold. And people love it. They finally feel they know something. I had by me hashkacha a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a family came from Eretz Yisrael, a husband and wife with a 9-year-old child who needed medical attention. They stayed with us. Hasidim, sons of Hasidim, wonderful people. And Baruch Hashem, the medical, everything was fixed. Baruch Hashem, so it was very, very successful, fine. But he stayed with us a few days, and he told me that he has a program that he developed that's become popular for boys between the age of 9, 10 to bar mitzvah, or maybe around that age group, where they chazer Masechta 101 times on off times. His 9-year-old kid recited the entire Masechta's Talmud like a song. It was like, whoa. And he enjoyed it. And he said, the kids love it. Then he showed me, this is what kids put out, machberot, where they have a like how many times does Rashi need two pshatim in Masechta to say something? Who argues with whom? How many times? And his kids, they answer that. And he said he has it in many places. He even has it in the Tilumi community. He has it in Givat Shmuel. He has a sniff, and he said it's very successful. So understanding the balance, learning stuff that you get down. I also think it's important because a lot of times we have a problem with fluency in the Gemara. Knowing something well gives us a sense of the fluency, how Gemara flows. Having a part of that, but not neglecting the amount of iyun, to learn a sugya well, to understand the machlokes and shittas and so on and so forth. The balance of what's right is always the key piece. So having some seder where you chaz material enough that you really feel it, it's more than that. After you leave yeshiva, you really have the amount of time and tranquility to learn really the iyun, and you also feel what's the point of it. So I'm doing it like, okay, because you gotta have to be kaveh item Torah. But if I feel that every day I know something more and it's adding up, it's like I tell people, if let's say somebody gives you $1,000 and you put it in the bank, so now you go to work and somebody offers you $50 for something, you work and you do it because now I have $1,050, $1,100, and whatever. But if I blow it, and then someone offers me $20, what is it? It's $20, $50. That's not money. If a person has a hergel that he's accruing knowledge that's his day after day, so now I can only do 20 minutes a day to learn. But that'll help me add a Mishnah to my stockpile. And tomorrow another Mishnah. And at the end of the year, I have a Seder. I have a Seder Mishnah. Whatever it is, but I have it. I feel when somebody talks about it, I can talk intelligently about it. So fitting in, I can speak to your Rebbeim about how and what. They understand you better and they understand your needs better. But definitely there's something very important to be said about Chazara. Yeah. What's your name?
My name is Gad. I'm from Johannesburg.
From all corners of the globe. Manchester, Johannesburg. Yeah.
I just wanted to, first of all, I read your book, Ben Talked a lot, and just thank you. It provided me with a lot of help. Yeah, I'm leaving Yeshiva this week.
Wow. Should be a lot about stuff. What are you doing, Mitzvah Shem?
I'm going to university in South Africa.
Yes. What do you want to study?
What I want to study?
What are you going to study?
Engineering.
Very nice.
I really had a question, just in the general concept that you mentioned about having a shevet lady within the nation. That will be the core of the nation. That is really their job is to sit and learn, to sit and be learning and develop the world of Torah. And apart from doing a proper personal cheshbon nefesh and getting the proper guidance from your Rabbi, number one, how does a person really know if he belongs to that Shevet Levi? Number two, who are the Shevet Levi of today? And if today, question number three, do we find ourselves in a Milchemet Mitzvah? And if so, how does that impact the Shevet Levi of today in terms of drafting to the army and fighting in the war we're currently in?
So I guess a lot of parts of your question. Let's go step by step. The problem we have when we don't have really worked out halacha is application. So we understand the principle of Shevet Levi, we understand the principle of Muhammad, of mitzvah, and so on. Making a Shulchan Aruch out of it is really difficult, and that becomes very problematic. But I want to address a different point about it. So you're speaking about who belongs to Shevet Levi. I want to address a different include about it. So Shevet Levi is supposed to be the pinnacle of Klal Yisrael and so on and so forth. The people who are osek in Torah in a real way and in full intensity, their whole metzias is kulei Torah, are Shevet Levi. Obviously, I'm certainly not a person that can walk around and take people's temperature and say who you are, what you're not. But there's something else that I think is very important about the Shevet Levi concept. Who do we hold in esteem in a sincere way? And it's a problem everywhere. Let's explain. When I meet somebody and I speak in awe of the person, I'm in awe of that person. Are the people whose godless in Torah awes me, who's godless I don't want to use the word sitkis in a cheap way, but I mean in emes, a person that it's worth traveling. The Chiddushei Rim took the Sfas Emes twice to meet the Kotzker. And he was a young boy, the Sfas Emes. He was a Yasim. I don't know if he was 5 or 6, very young. And it was obviously wasn't an age where he could learn anything from him or not. Chiddushei Rim was his grandfather. He raised him. He was a Yasim. And they asked him, why are you schlepping him there? And he answered, I wanted to see once in his life an emissary. So does our society have that attitude? The answer is the attitude. So, or do we worship a person who's a very wealthy person? And this, the problem is it cuts across. Even people that proclaim Shevet Levi is their ideal. Do we look up and if you ask my child, when does your father's voice tremble when he talks about who? And that answer, whose pictures do we have? What place do they occupy in our society? Everybody respects Rabbanim, Kvod Rabbanim, Chashuv, Yiftach et zeh, Yagid Devrei Pticha, but who do you look up to? That's really, there's a famous Ben Yoina. He speaks about, it says, Kesed L'Matzev, Zav L'Kor, Kesed Matzev, and Ishkefi Mahaloi. If we don't appreciate Gedolim, and I don't want to take Gedolim the cheap way. I mean, if we don't see as the pinnacle of Adam a person that expresses it, then if you're Cook's Talmud, that's fine. He's a person that represents a certain pinnacle. But if it's this person, that person, the other person, there was a political incident which it's kind of silly in its own right, but expressed something. Agudas Yisrael had its last convention in Eretz Yisrael in 1980. Let's see Gdola. I don't think they'll have one again. Fair one. And a lot of Choshev Rabbanim came. It was very, very nice. It was the beginning of Begin's government. I think Begin came in 77, 78, I don't remember, but there was still like a honeymoon. And Begin was going to come visit, and the president, Yitzhak Navon, was also going to visit. They come to Knesset to sort of to acknowledge it. I don't know. And it got stuck on a point of protocol. The Israeli protocol is that the Nasi of the Medina is citizen number one. He walks in last. Everyone acknowledges coming in, and everyone rises. He sits down. And Aguda said, "No way." And they said, "Well, that's the law. That's the protocol." And it got stuck. So fine, okay. That's. But there's a point to it. As a society, a religious society, if it's a religious society, not a society who is religious, then the person who embodies that world should be the one that we look up to. If we see ourselves as a political entity, then the great teachers, the rabbis, great scientists are great people, but the president is number one. It's sort of an expression. So when we talk about Shevet Levi, would somebody say, I hope my child grows up to be the one who is going to be Gadol b'Torah? How many of us, if a Rebbe sat down and said, I want to tell you something. Your child is somebody who can one day know Shas and Poskim and be Maimed Talmidim L'Doros. We would be a little bit. How much would we say? Wow, that's what I've been wishing for. It makes no difference what stripe, what color, whatever. But that's a test of who you are and what you admire. So having Shevet Levi in the middle, it's not just. So yes, it's a very difficult issue in getting it specifically. But a lot more important is how much. I was once taught a lesson as an 8-year-old. Some lessons remain with you. I grew up in Lower East Side, which was in those days not as fancy as Paraguay, where Rabbi Ryan came from, but it was salt of the earth type of place. Good people, many refugees, children of immigrants. It was good people, but very not knowledgeable, nothing. My father was a shamus in a very big shul, Bialystok shul. And he, so one of the things we did was he sold aliyas, he sold the psiches for Yom Kippur night, Yom Kippur day, Musaf. He sold them, and there'd be one person would buy them, and he would give them out to the people that he wanted to. Now, Rosh Hashanah Kippur was a very important day because a few hundred people down in the shul. Many and all the important political figures, congressmen, state senators, judges, I still remember their names. They attended because it was Hashgacha has it that Yom Kippur comes out between primaries and election day. So obviously it's meant to be a place where you get the votes and stuff. So fine. They would come and they're all Yidden, they're all traditional. Oh, that was the mistake. They always got the kippurim. They wouldn't have got the kippurim. I was 8 years old. Next to me was sitting an elderly gentleman, Mr. Jacobson, I still remember his name, quiet, shy person. He started by selling bananas in the street. Then he got himself a push cart, moved up to a store, bought a few stores. At this time, when the store was happening, he was the biggest wholesaler of fruit in New York. And he still looked like a Lower East Sider. The shopping rate, everything, that was Lower East Side has never changed. That was him. Very sweet man, elderly man. My father went over and said, Mr. Jacobson, would you buy the psiches? How much is that? $100. Fine. Who shall be machabed? So I told my father, walk around the shul, and anybody wearing sneakers should get a psicha. Everybody fasted. I believe everybody fasted, or just about everyone fasted. Everyone wore shoes. No one knew the halachas. It was a maratzim. But there were a handful of people that were Torah people I really knew. I was very wise, right? And I said, no, Mr. Jacobson, you're supposed to give psiches to very important officials and politicians. That's what I knew the halachas really well. So he puts his hand around me, very sweet, and he says, listen, I grew up with all of these politicians and people you're talking about. They're garbage. There's nothing there to admire. But he said, I've paid attention over the years. The people who wear sneakers in Kippur are very special people. I don't know what it is about them. That the sneaker people are just different. They deserve that kibbutz. That's what it means to look up. And he, unfortunately, it was a very different world of people he couldn't, but to be able to have that. So speaking about reaching out to Goyim, if they would see us as the sneaker people, and then we'd make an impression. And having the same life, if the figure there were many Torah people, many different hashkafis to hold in great esteem. Are they the central figures? Is their picture on your wall? Do you take a kid and say, I'd like to go? My father's kind of was real literature. He took me once or twice to see Satmar Rav in Wolfsburg. We walked an hour over the bridge. Kloisenberger Rebbe used to go to Salvetic Sherman on the upper and then in Washington Heights with the subway, and no cars in those days, and so on. Who are the people that we admire? We need to create a Shevet Levi in our lives. It's the people you look up to. It's what you speak about. It's what's admirable. I have to apologize because I have to go, but it's really very special to be here. It's always a very thoughtful group, very, very, really taking issues very seriously, thinking about them. And from the Silver Spring boys that have been here, Baruch Shem, they're very matzliach and doing well. You should be matzliach and build your own Torah life as Hashem when time comes. Okay.